Tonight, Jaime Battiste's run for the Liberal leadership has come to an end.
Let's put our hands together for the Chiefs and Assembly coming together to vote in Kyra Wilson today.
The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs have voted for their new Grand Chief.
But the last few years, it was difficult to compete with online media.
And many small Indigenous-run media are experiencing trouble keeping their doors open. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. The first Indigenous candidate to run for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada is ending their campaign. Mi'kmaq Member of Parliament Jaime Battiste made history just last week when he announced his leadership bid. If he had won, he would have become the first Indigenous Prime Minister of Canada. Late this afternoon, Battiste released a statement saying he believed the best way forward to advance reconciliation, protect the environment, and to address the wealth gap is to endorse Mark Carney. Under the Liberal leadership contest rules, a non-refundable payment of $50,000 was due today. There are now 5 candidates still in the leadership race, including frontrunners Carney and Chrystia Freeland. To Manitoba now, where Long Plain First Nations Kyra Wilson has been elected as the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs' new Grand Chief, winning over half of the total votes on the first ballot. Reporter Sierra Bettens has more from Wednesday's election.
Tears of joy erupted from the crowd as Kyra Wilson was elected the next Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. The 38-year-old former chief of Long Plain First Nation won the by-election on Wednesday with 37 out of 61 votes. The 3 other candidates in the running were Baba Dillon, Leroy Constant, and Glenn Hudson.
Let's put our hands together for the Chiefs and Assembly coming together to vote in Kyra Wilson today.
The by-election was prompted by the death of Grand Chief Kathy Merrick in September 2024. Royal Lake Chief Betsy Kennedy stepped in as acting Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. In the past, Wilson worked closely with Merrick on the campaign to search the Prairie Green landfill for the remains of 2 Indigenous women.
I had a really great connection with our late Grand Chief, and she was a strong leader, and I want to be able to honor, that legacy that she left behind at the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, and I still feel connected, to her and the work that we were able to do together.
Wilson says she plans to tackle many issues as Grand Chief, including housing, healthcare, and accessibility in northern communities.
Some of the accessibility issues in some of our northern communities, I know that has been brought up several times regarding whether it's all-weather roads, some of the transportation means that communities have to deal with. So those are some of the things that I definitely want to take a look at.
She'll also serve as an advocate for economic reconciliation.
Our nations deserve the best, and they deserve the same opportunities as everybody else. So I want to be able to talk to our different levels of government when we talk about economic reconciliation.
As Grand Chief, Wilson will act as a voice for First Nations in Manitoba across multiple levels of government. She plans to take a collaborative approach informed by community voices.
I want to work together. I want to be able to support our nations, and I intend on doing that. So it's my hope that all the levels of government want to have a collaborative approach.
Now a sworn-in Grand Chief, she thanks those who helped her along the way.
Everyone has been so supportive, and I'm just so honored to be in this position. And I just want to say thank you to everyone for that support.
Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Still in Manitoba, Bloodvein RCMP are investigating a homicide involving a 2-year-old girl. Her primary caregiver has been charged with second-degree murder. On the evening of January 24th, Bloodvein RCMP responded to a report of a suspicious child death after a 2-year-old was brought into the nursing station with serious injuries. The child was pronounced deceased. Autopsy results released Monday confirmed the injuries were from a homicide. On Wednesday, RCMP arrested 56-year-old Burma Sky from Bloodvein First Nation and charged her with second-degree murder. Sky was the toddler's primary caregiver. RCMP say they continue to investigate. A former Catholic priest who pleaded guilty to indecent assault against 7 Inuit children more than 40 years ago has been sentenced to 6 years in prison. The Iqaluit court heard the assaults of 6 girls and 1 boy took place in Iqaluit between 1978 and 1982. The 77-year-old stood in court and asked for forgiveness before being sentenced. Dieger said he had done cruel things and that he was a changed person. He was previously convicted of committing numerous sexual offenses while working as an oblate missionary. To Northern Ontario now, where a candlelight vigil was held in Thunder Bay last night for a mother of 8 from Long Lake No. 58 First Nation. Adrian Tawagijic was reported missing on January 10th. The OPP says Tawagijic was found deceased in Long Lake on January 26th. The OPP's Greenstone Crime Unit, Northwest Regional Support Team, and Forensic Identification Services are working with the Chief Coroner and the Ontario Forensic Pathology Service in the investigation of Tawagijic's death. The candlelight vigil is being planned in the community next week. Long Lake No. 58 is an Anishinaabe community of roughly 450 people living on reserve 300 kilometers northeast of Thunder Bay. Well, we want to hear what you think about anything you see here. Here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you'd like to share, you can send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, you can go to our website, aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. Time to step aside for a quick break, but first, here's a story we're working on for you in the coming days.
I'm Tyler Shingoose. Conversations regarding a proposed location for a safe injection site in Winnipeg are ongoing. Community members have raised concerns over the potential effects the site can introduce to an already stressed neighborhood, especially being next door to a school.
Here's the thing. Every politician I've ever heard, when they campaign, will say, our youth are the future. But as soon as they're elected, that kind of goes out the window. And the safe injection site, so close to schools, is a testament to that.
Coming up soon on APTN National News.
Welcome back. First Nations newspaper Indian Times closed their doors in Akwesasne last month after decades in production, citing a lack of funds from ad revenue. As reporter Savannah Craig shows, many Indigenous media are experiencing barriers from funding to getting their stories out.
Indigenous media is in crisis. After 59 years in operation, Inuvik-based newspaper, the Inuvik Drum, shuttered its doors. Just weeks before, Akwesasne-based paper, Indian Time, ended operations after more than 40 years.
Indian Time opened up in 1983, so that was quite a long run. But the last few years, it was difficult to compete with online media.
Marjorie Skitters was the editor of Indian Time. She says a big void in news coverage remains at a pivotal time. As Akwesasne runs through the borders of both Canada and the United States, concern is growing as some of U.S. President Donald Trump's recent anti-immigration roundups have targeted members of the Navajo Nation.
Now there's a vacuum. There's no media for this community, and there's no media for any Native community that has lost their newspaper.
Both Indian Time and Inuvik Drum closed due to lack of ad revenue. Even an established news outlet like The Nation is experiencing issues.
We were just starting to get advertising from Facebook and that, and we were starting to use it in certain ways and expand on it, and all of a sudden there's no access.
Will Nichols runs The Nation, a news magazine serving Quebec's Cree communities. He says the meta ban has hindered their relationship across Instagram and Facebook. Nichols says The Nation also uses grants from the government, but he says these grants are very limited for Indigenous media.
Even after 35 years, I'm only making $40,000 a year, and we really can't afford to pay me any more than that.
Steve Bonspiel runs Gonawage's newspaper, The Eastern Door.
It all depends on how it's structured.
He says the paper gets some money from grants, but it is limited.
If we were only doing ad sales and only circulation, we'd be in trouble.
Out of the fire of the Oka crisis, or known to locals as the Siege of Gonasadage, The Eastern Door was born in 1992. Bonspiel says the paper amplified Indigenous voices and perspectives in the aftermath of the crisis, during a time where Indigenous voices were invisible in the media.
Other than that, all my other stories are in.
While the Eastern Door remains strong, there's always decisions about cutting costs.
Our print bill is so high. I'm like, there's going to come a time where we're like, do we cut this out? Can we make it work online?
Even outside of times of crisis, Indigenous-run media is still necessary.
It's important for the community to see themselves in the paper and in any media. That's the only way you can understand who you're writing about, who you're covering, the stories you're covering, why the trauma exists, why certain people won't look you in the eye and why others will talk your ear off for an hour, without asking one question. So all of that is understanding our communities.
Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Montreal.
Such important work being done there. Our Truth and Politics panel is here now, and this week we're looking back on the life and legacy of Bill Wilson and looking at U.S. President Donald Trump's plan to fully recognize the Lumbee tribe in North Carolina. Here with me now are Jennifer Leywitz of Pasqua Harbor Strategies and Nigon Sinclair, a columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press. Nigon, Jennifer, thanks for being with us. Nigon, we'll start with you. Bill Wilson left us this past weekend. How do you remember him?
One of the very first Indigenous lawyers in Canada. Certainly worked with my father a whole lot. Of course, was there during the constitutional talks, was a Quaqua hereditary chief. One of the most notable moments I think that everyone remembers is this really pivotal moment between, at the time, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, who had this rather poor attitude when it came to Indigenous peoples throughout the entire constitutional talks in the early 1980s, and Bill Wilson constantly confronting him quite forcefully, fighting for Indigenous rights, Indigenous territory title. And then there was an interesting moment in which Bill Wilson introduced Jody Wilson-Raybould, which would eventually become the Attorney General in the Canadian government of Justin Trudeau, his son, and he introduces her to Pierre Trudeau, saying she would like your job. And I think Bill Wilson was known as a father, a grandfather, a very kind man. He certainly mentored me over the years. And I can remember as being a young 17-year-old meeting him for the first time and being struck by how kind he was and generous he was.
Jennifer, your thoughts on Bill's legacy?
My legacy when it comes to Bill Wilson is similar to what Niigaan is saying. I think about, the pillars of reconciliation, advancement in this country, and the people that were at the forefront of it. And interestingly enough, when I heard about the passing of Bill Wilson, I immediately thought of Niigaan's father as well, because when I think about the warriors before our modern government came in and attempted to wipe out our people, we traditionally had warriors before that time. And then as the evolution of government policy tried to change us and destroy us, we still had warriors emerging that did the work and put in that work, especially at a time when it wasn't popular to do so. I mean, when you think about Bill Wilson and the instrumental role that he played in enshrining Indigenous rights into our Constitution, and, even in modern day, to see his daughter go on and become such a powerful person and leader, it just shows that, our ability and resiliency has always been there, and so have our warriors. And I think he will definitely be somebody that we will feel the effects of his legacy for a very long time. And I think we see a lot of what he stood for in his two daughters as well. And I think we're incredibly lucky as a country to have both Corey and Jody. And to echo what Niigaan had said about Bill, I can say those same qualities came out in Jody. I've met her a couple times, and she just epitomes kindness and respect and patience. So
good stuff. We're gonna move south of the medicine line now, and Donald Trump has been busy since taking office. One of the things he wants to do is grant full federal recognition to the Lumbee tribe in North Carolina. Niigaan, you've been looking into this. What can you tell us?
I wrote a column about this, and not to say shameless self-promotion, but if anybody wants to read a little bit more, it's a fascinating story. The Lumbee tribe has come out and supported Donald Trump over the years. Those of you that know the history of Donald Trump and Native Americans, it's been very contentious. Certainly a lot of fights over casinos back on the East Coast. Donald Trump's been well known to say quite racist things about Native people, but yet he has a very strong indigenous constituency in areas like North Carolina with the Lumbee, but then also in Oklahoma, which voted overwhelmingly for Trump in the last election, which would have involved a lot of Native American voters. In the case of the Lumbee, this is a group of people who have, at times, certainly by the standards of the Eastern Band of Cherokee, who are the kind of major tribe of North Carolina, have somewhat complicated claims. That's my glass half full way of saying it. They come from a series of different groups of people, moved to urban settings. They have no real land base that, other than the ones that they self-identify, that is historically based in archives. It's a very complicated situation for the Lumbee. They received partial recognition by the federal government, federal U.S. government, over a century ago, but that inhibits them from receiving tribal funding, supports, recognition for their land claims, and so on. And this will offer to them land, but it will also be land that is claimed by the Eastern Band of Cherokee. And so the Eastern Band of Cherokee have opposed that recognition, and now what we have is two tribes in North Carolina who have now very significant, large population bases who will now be claimed.
I think we lost you there for a second, Niigaan. We'll go to you, Jennifer. And how do you think that this might affect other Native American tribes or even Indigenous peoples up here?
I think this opens up our conversation around that self-identification piece that Niigaan was discussing, especially I know in one of our last episodes when we were talking about this and how identity is more than just what you claim as your ancestral ties, but your sense of belonging. And even for me, understanding where I come from and the family dynamics and even the role that my ancestors and family played in our tribe and what is now our nation. And I think when you just get into the modern context of people now, with those claims that maybe aren't 100% verified or they keep changing, it really starts to put into question what that's going to look like in the future if we have more groups emerging that are coming from several different areas and basically claiming like sovereignty and autonomy, and then wanting the same recognition of rights that tribes that have sustained the evolution of time for as long as they have are now essentially in competition with like emerging tribes and time, and even right now when you hear of tribes that are speaking on behalf of Native Americans and supporting somebody like Donald Trump, that starts to bring in the conversation around, like the violence and stuff that Native Americans can experience because one group is promoting it and the other are fighting against it. So I think that this is going to open up a much larger and more complicated conversation. But at the end of the day, I think it brings us back to the point of needing to really establish, what those concepts and those mechanisms are for measuring who is Indigenous, or in the United States' case, Native American, and who's not.
Jennifer Negon, will leave it there. Of course, we're going to continue the conversation over on the Truth in Politics podcast, where you can find wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to you both.
You betcha.
Lots more over on the podcast. We also discussed the election of Kyra Wilson to Grand Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Manitoba Chief, sorry. Speaking of politics, Nation to Nation is coming up tonight right after this newscast. We'll have a preview for you right after this break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. During a recent visit to Toronto, James Moore captured this photo from atop the CN Tower and then sent it to us. Thanks for sharing the view, James. You get around out there. You can send your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, -6 with flurries in Fredericton, snow, and +2 in Halifax. -16 in Kuujjuaq, 15 below in Nain. -5 with flurries in Montreal, 15 below in Val-d'Or. -3 in Sault Ste. Marie, 7 below in North Bay. -7 in Thunder Bay, sunny and chilly -18 in Sioux Lookout. -26 in Churchill, 24 below in Puckatawagan. -22 in Barons River, -17 in Winnipeg. 11 below with snow in Regina, -13 and snow in Saskatoon. 28 below in Uranium City and Stony Rapids. In northern Alberta, snow and -15 in High Level, 6 below with flurries in Grand Prairie. -11 and snow in Edmonton, 8 above in Lethbridge. +7 in Vancouver, snow and 5 above in Kamloops. -5 with snow in Prince George, -4 and flurries in Smithers. -34 in Old Crow, 32 below in Beaver Creek. -31 with snow in Yellowknife, -27 and flurries in Norman Wells. 22 below with snow for Sax Harbor and for Pawlatuck. -30 in Chesterfield and Whale Cove. 26 below in Resolute, -29 in Igloolik. Over to our Ottawa studio now, where Fraser Needham is standing by with a look at tonight's Nation to Nation.
Coming up after the news, 12 First Nations located on the shores of Lake Superior in northern Ontario have rejected a $3.6 billion government deal to settle long-standing treaty issues. Gull Bay First Nation Chief Wilfred King is here to tell us why. As the Trump administration moves to crack down on illegal migrants, Native Americans are getting targeted in some of the raids. We talked to Justin Astian of the Navajo Nation about what is going on. And APTN reporter Karen Pugliese is here to talk about the Liberal leadership race to replace Justin Trudeau. All this just ahead on Nation to Nation.
Thanks, Fraser. Looks good. Fraser is up next with Nation to Nation right here in less than 2 minutes' time. We're all out of time for your APTN National News for this Thursday. You can find a whole lot more over on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. I will see you back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for your first look at the day's news. Have a great night.